Joining us now, Jerry Palm, bracketologist from CBS Sports, kind enough to hang out with us. Jerry, how you doing?
Hi, Jerry.
I'm all right. How are you?
Very good.
Good. All right, so we got a lot to break down, a lot to talk about. So let's start with a team in our backyard that may be the hottest team in college basketball right now, BYU. Just how impressive have you been with their rise up the ranks over the last few weeks?
I mean, yeah, it's been tremendous. And I happened to be at the game the last time they lost at Cincinnati.
Oh, really?
And they were horrible in the second half of that game. And I thought, there's no way this team's going to make the tournament. And then they haven't lost since. So, yes, they're definitely going to make the tournament now. And it's a great run, especially considering how they looked in that game. They must have had some kind of a meeting or something where they decided that was no longer going to be acceptable, and they have really turned it on at the right time.
So that's the last time that you'd physically been in the arena to watch them?
That's the only time I've been in the arena to watch them.
Were you impressed with Cincinnati at that point?
I thought that they had a shot to make the tournament. I didn't really think that they were, overwhelmingly. I'm not surprised they didn't make it, but they had some work to do after that game as well. They were had some work to really even get on the bubble, and so I'm not surprised they didn't make it, but they certainly had a good second half of that game.
So currently you have them as a 7 seed. What would they need to do, in your opinion, to increase that to maybe a 6 or a 5 in the Big 12 tournament?
Well, they're going to have to beat somebody good, and it's not just about you. Everybody else is playing now in that part of the bracket too. So, you're dependent on what other teams do. But if they can beat someone ahead of them, that's their best chance to move up.
I'm sure you did the mock bracket thing with the NCAA did back in the day. I did it about 10 years ago.
I did it, at least three times.
How difficult is it? Because I know last year BYU was slotted as a 5 seed on the seed list, but got pushed down to 6 because of the Sunday play. You also have to take that into consideration too, that might affect seeding before it's all said and done.
Sure. It's the bracketing this year is a mess because of just the enormous size of the major conferences now. Since we're down one from what we used to have, I've got 13 SEC teams. You're trying to keep them separated. You're trying to keep the Big 10 teams separated, the Big 12 teams separated, to the point where making sure BYU doesn't play on Sunday is a relatively minor concern. You have to do it, of course, but it's just another thing to fit in with all of the other rules of keeping teams from the same conference separated when you have such a big number of teams coming from basically 4 leagues.
So, Jerry, as I take a look at your bracket and some of your seedings, you got Houston as a 1 seed, Arizona as a 6, Kansas as a 7. I'm just kind of curious, your overall take, and then I think you've got Texas Tech as a 3.
Yes, that's right.
Your overall take of the Big 12, how impressed were you with this conference throughout the season? Yeah,
it didn't go kind of the way we thought. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean it was good. By the way, I have also Iowa State as a 3. Really the thing that has been, I guess, surprising is that Kansas is a 7. They were the preseason number 1 and just never lived up to it. Everybody else, BYU's been a pleasant surprise. I think the other teams that I've got in the bracket are about what we thought they would be going into this season. But yeah, Kansas really, this is the second year in a row where they just, February and, in particular, but February and the beginning of March have not been particularly kind to them. And it's just kind of weird to see it happen once, stuff happens, but 2 years in a row, that's probably concerning.
So I do the play-by-play for Utah State. They've had a couple of rough games at Boise and then at Colorado State, rebounded with a blowout win against Air Force, as you would expect. But are they safely in, even if they lose in the quarters, or do they need a quarterfinal victory to get themselves feeling pretty comfortable next or coming up on Sunday? Well,
a win would certainly help, right?
Yeah.
They can get in with a loss. I don't have them on the bubble. But, who do they get? They get UNLV or Air Force.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to lose to them.
Yeah.
Losing to them is a problem. But after that, if you're playing another potential tournament team, then it's not necessarily as damaging. But they can't afford to lose to someone that's not a potential tournament team, whether it's the first game or some other game, because you never know who you're going to get going forward.
You've got San Diego State, Boise State, Utah State, New Mexico. I don't believe you have Colorado State in.
I do not. That's right.
But,
they've only, just like in the last couple of days, reached bubble status.
Oh, I know for sure. I'm not making a claim for Colorado State, but four teams realistically for the Mountain West. Do you think that's doable? Because I think I've been kind of planning on 3 all year this year.
I think that's a max. I've got 2 of the last 4 in from the Mountain West. And Colorado State. It's funny. I mean, I actually wrote about Colorado State as a potential bid stealer, but the bid, if they steal one, could be from their own league.
Yeah.
You've got, isn't San Diego and Boise's an opening round game, right?
Correct. The 4-5.
Yeah. So that's definitely a problem for the loser. That doesn't mean they won't get in. It's just you're done. But it's and you're dependent on what other teams do, and you're praying that nobody steals bids. Which in this year. Like last year, I think there were 5 bid stealers. This year, there might be 1 or 2. It's the loser of that Boise San Diego opening round game has got a problem and may not make it. Colorado State probably has to win the league, but maybe not. And New Mexico and Utah State are safer, but I don't have anybody up above an 8. I haven't got a top 25 team in this group, so. I don't know that anybody is 100% safe if they take a bad enough loss.
So people here in the state have followed a little bit of Utah Valley. Scotty and I don't cover a lot of Utah Valley basketball, but they did go 15-1 in WAC play, and you've got them here in the NCAA tournament coming probably through bracket win. Talk about what you know about Utah Valley, and are they a team that could pose any kind of problem?
I would be surprised, I think, if they were the kind of a team that could be trouble to somebody. It depends on the seed. I mean, if you're a 14 or a 15, then it's really hard because the quality of the opponents you get, and I've got them as a 14. So if they can play their way up to a 14, you're going to get a 3. You don't see a lot of 14s beat 3s. It's been known to happen, but it doesn't happen much. But if you're a 13, then you start talking about where we normally see upsets, 13 4s, 5 12s. It's much more rare to get a 14 with an upset win. So, for Utah Valley, you're hoping that you make a good enough impression and you get a little help and maybe push themselves up the bracket a little bit.
We're always on the lookout for the potential 12-5 upset. And I was telling Hans earlier, I saw UC San Diego up close in person. They came to Logan and beat Utah State. Are they a team that if somebody's looking for that first-round upset that they should be looking in on?
I think pretty much any of the 12s. But yes, certainly them if they make it. They're not an at-large if they don't. And Irvine also in that league. If they end up making it, would be a potential upset team as well. So yes, certainly the champion of that league, if it's one of those 2, is going to get a seed where they've got a chance to win a game.
So, Jerry, I don't know how much you've looked at the BYU numbers, but obviously up there in 3-point percentage, number 1 shooting team in the Big 12 in 2-point percentage. Percentages are all extremely high offensively, kind of across the board. Just knowing what you know about BYU, could BYU be a big tournament threat?
Yeah, if they get a good enough draw. I mean, the draw is so important, right? If BYU ends up as an 8, well, you got a problem. But if you got a 7, the 2 seeds might be beatable. And if they can get higher than that, the higher they can get away from the middle of the bracket, the better chance they have to make the kind of run you're talking about. But when you shoot the way they do, you always have a chance. You've got a shooter's chance in any game that you play if you shoot well enough, and they shoot very well. So they'll definitely be a threat as long as they continue to shoot well.
Obviously, your number 1s, Auburn, Duke, Florida, Houston. I think Auburn and Duke are safely in there as your number 1s. Houston, how much other movement could there be at Florida at number 1, or do you think they're pretty safely in there?
Oh, gosh, no. The 4th number 1 is still up for grabs. Florida, Alabama, Tennessee are right there. Even Michigan State has a chance. But if one of those 3, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, wins the SEC, they'll be the 4th number 1. And if not, then Michigan State might be able to make a run at it.
Jerry, are you feeling these rumors of tournament expansion? Are you kind of in on that, or would you be on board with a bit of tournament expansion? And if so,
No.
what would you? Okay, so across the board, you don't want to see it.
I am steadfastly in favor of going back to 64.
Okay, so not even having the 4 playing.
No. That was the perfect number. It should have never changed. 72. I mean, I can barely find 4 teams to put as the first 4 out that have any shot of making this tournament. I can't see expanding for those 4 teams. And there are teams I like personally on that list. It doesn't matter. Those 4 teams don't belong in this bracket or any bracket. And I'm steadfastly against expansion, and I want to go back to 64.
So is it just the full genesis is money, right? It's not even about.
It's always money.
Yeah, it's not like who are we missing or. Are we
No, here's the thing. If I thought they were expanding for VCU or UC San Diego or teams like that, Drake, maybe you could talk me into it, but they're not. They're expanding for Cincinnati. They're expanding for Northwestern. That's who they're expanding for, and I just don't believe for a minute it has any other motivation.
Are you just as a college basketball fan and a guy that has been watching this your entire adult life and covering it, how impressed are you with Cooper Flagg, and has he even done more at this first year than maybe you even expected?
Well, I don't know. I didn't see him play high school ball. I don't really follow that. But obviously he came in with very high expectations, and he has certainly lived up to it. He's been a tremendous player for Duke, a team that's relying on 2 very good freshmen, because Knuppel would on any other team would be getting probably the same plaudits that Flagg does, but, it plays in his shadow. They don't seem to mind because they're doing very well. But, he's been everything everybody said he would be. I don't know that I would go away from Janai Broome as Player of the Year, but if it's not Broome, then it's got to be Flagg. Those 2 have been at the top of college basketball all season.
When you're putting your stuff together and you're finding your seeds, how much weight do you put into the coaches? Like, we
Zero.
Really?
None. Nobody cares who coaches the team. They don't play. Nothing. That's not a factor, nor should it be.
Okay, I've always wondered because, you see Tom Izzo or Calipari or even Mark Few, you've seen them make runs, but you feel like it's all talent, no coach.
No, what I'm saying is, are you talking about like when I'm picking teams after the bracket's out?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally misunderstood. I thought you meant it's, as a factor as to whether or not they should get in.
No.
I'll put a little bit into that, I think. Yeah, there are coaches that seem to have good track records of success. But, even those coaches have, teams that are not quite as good as they're used to having. So, I do. Let's put a little bit of thought into that. Yeah.
Bracketology report up at CBSSports.com. Down the stretch, kind of give us the schedule. How often are you updating that, and what can we expect throughout your busiest week of the year?
At least once a day.
I love it.
This part of the week, probably only once a day because there's not a lot going on until the big conferences get going. But, at least once a day.
You're a busy man, Jerry. We appreciate you taking a few minutes.
So, thanks for having me on.
There you go, Jerry. Jerry Palm, he just does a tremendous job at CBSSports.com.